Welcome to True Echo, where the unheard stories finally speak loudest. This is where power doesn't shout, it moves in silence. And today's story? It starts in seat 27B, and ends with a flight crew's careers grounded for good. It was just past 6:15 a.m. at Sky Harbor International Airport, Phoenix. The terminal buzzed with quiet exhaustion, rolling bags, sleepy faces, pre-boarding calls slicing through a still-tired sky. Flight 782 to Newark was boarding. Darius Remy Langston moved through the crowd like he didn't need to prove anything. Not in a tailored suit or luxury brand logos, just a clean navy sport coat, sharp jeans, a carry-on in hand, and a sense of direction. There was no flash, only presence. He walked to the priority boarding lane, nodded at the gate agent. "Morning." She barely looked up. A flicker of tension in her wrist as she scanned his ticket, 1A, first class. No smile. No courtesy. Just the barcode and a cold beep. Darius said nothing and moved forward. He'd felt this chill before. But he wasn't here to make noise. He had a different reason for flying today. On the jet bridge, the air changed. That strange, metallic hum of proximity to takeoff. He stepped into the cabin and greeted the attendant at the door with a soft, 1A. But before he could take his seat, she was there. Blonde. Early 40s. Cheekbones like knives. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sir," she said, stepping into his path. "First class is for premium passengers only." Darius didn't blink. He showed the boarding pass. "That's my seat." She glanced at it. "Barely. There must be a mistake. You should be in main cabin plus. I'll help you find your seat." He tilted his head slightly, calm but firm. "No, ma'am. I booked this ticket myself." Her voice dropped a notch lower. "Sir, we've had issues with duplicate seat bookings before. Please step aside." It wasn't loud. Not yet. But passengers had started watching. The way they do, half interested, hoping for drama, but not enough to intervene. He could have fought. He could have made a scene. Instead, he offered one last response. "If there's an issue, I'm happy to wait and speak to a supervisor once the plane is boarded." Her response? Cold. "Please take a seat in the back." He stared for a moment, not in defeat, but in calculation. Then he walked. Past rows of eyes that refused to meet his. Past the silent chorus of complicity. Row 27B. Middle seat. Crying child behind him. And that was where she made her second mistake. The seat was tight. The kind of tight that reminded you no matter how far you'd come, someone always thought they could put you back in your place. Darius Langston didn't fidget. He didn't sigh, or tap his foot like the man beside him. He just sat. Still. Focused. Observing. Every little thing. "Can you believe that?" muttered the guy to his left, flannel shirt and calloused hands. "That was messed up, man. You had a first-class ticket." Darius nodded once. "Yeah." The man shook his head. "Wouldn't happen to me. I mean, look at me." He half laughed, half apologized. Darius gave a neutral smile. He wasn't surprised. Not by the treatment. Not by the quiet acceptance of others. But he also wasn't bothered, not the way they expected. Because what none of them knew was that Flight 782 was flying straight into the center of a long-laid plan. Darius hadn't chosen this flight by coincidence. It was strategic. Volair Regional, the airline running this route, had just been acquired by his company, Remitech. And Darius? He wasn't just the CEO. He was the architect behind the deal. The man behind the curtain. But today, he wasn't watching from behind a desk. He was experiencing it firsthand. As the plane began taxiing, he stared out the window, the Phoenix sun barely rising, painting gold streaks on the tarmac. Inside, the coldness from earlier still clung to the air. He didn't reach for his phone right away. He didn't have to. But when he did, the message was swift. Confirm Ops Control by 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, staff eval on 782 complete. Saved. Logged. Time-stamped. This wasn't about ego. This wasn't about revenge. It was about confirmation. Documentation. A lesson they didn't even know they were about to learn. In first class, seat 1A remained empty. And the woman who denied him that seat. She was busy doting on Mr. Halberstam, an older white man with silver hair and a frequent flyer card. Her voice softened around him. Smiles widened. Performative charm in full force. Darius watched from the back, not with anger, but precision. When the drink cart came through, he declined. So did the man next to him. The toddler behind them kicked the seat again. Darius didn't flinch. Not yet. He opened his laptop. Secure folder. Ops merge, Tier 1. The screen blinked awake like it had been waiting for him. Under Personnel Audit, he found her profile. Rhonda M. Wilkes, Flight Attendant. Status, Temporary Hold Pending Review. Notes, Prior passenger complaints, failure to follow verification protocol, incident flag, pending HR referral. He didn't even blink. Then, calmly, he opened a secure chat. Darius. Request full interaction log from gate through boarding. Flight 782. Cabin crew. 5:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to 6:20 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Forward to legal and East Coast HR. Ground team to meet plane in Newark. Quietly. Ops admin, Julius C. Acknowledged. Compiling now. Will notify comms once review doc is prepped. ETA 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. Darius. No media. No noise. Professional tone. Standard debrief. He closed the laptop. Work never stops, huh? Flannel shirt guy chuckled beside him. Darius nodded. Not really. You look like the kind of guy who runs something. I try, Darius said. You in tech or something? You've got that vibe. Something like that. Man, you must be killing it. Bet you make more than all of us back here combined. Again, Darius didn't confirm or deny. He didn't have to. His silence said enough. And while everyone else thought the man in 27B was just another businessman, they had no idea he held their future in his hand. Especially Rhonda. She passed through the aisle again. Didn't look at him. Didn't offer water. No acknowledgement. But she stopped 2 rows up. Same syrupy tone. Same deference to the silver-haired loyalty member. Still pretending. She didn't know she was being watched. That her decisions, her tone, her bias, it was all being recorded in real time. And not for public shaming. For accountability. By the time the seatbelt light flicked off with a chime, most passengers began shifting in their seats, reaching for magazines, phones, or stretching cramped limbs. But not Darius. He stayed still, the laptop now tucked away, his mind already moving 10 steps ahead. This wasn't just a routine flight for him. This was a live evaluation. A performance review in real time, for a crew that had no idea who was conducting it. Across the aisle, a mother tried calming her toddler with a juice box. In front of him, someone had reclined without warning. Darius didn't complain. He wasn't here for comfort. He was here for clarity. The airline had problems. That's why he bought it. Volair Regional had a reputation, unspoken, but known. Inconsistent service, outdated systems, and frequent passenger complaints about discretionary enforcement of policies. But that wasn't in the glossy reports or boardroom presentations. That was on the flights. In the tone of a gate agent. In the glance of a flight attendant. And now, he'd seen it for himself. He'd felt it. Then, from up the aisle, came something unexpected. A different flight attendant, early 20s maybe, nervous energy in his step, stopped at Darius's row. "Sir," he said, voice low, respectful. "Mr. Langston." Darius looked up, expression neutral. The man swallowed. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, about what happened earlier. I saw it. I should have said something. I didn't know who you were, but even if I hadn't." Darius raised a hand slightly. Not to dismiss, just to pause him. "What's your name?" "Brent." "Brent, let me ask you something. If I wasn't who I am, would you still be apologizing?" Brent blinked, hesitated, then nodded. "I think so." "Yeah. Then keep doing that," Darius said. "Quiet integrity matters." Brent lingered a second, unsure whether to stay or go. Darius gave a nod. Brent nodded back and moved on. It was a small moment. But to Darius, it mattered more than anything Rhonda had said. Brent still had something so many others didn't, conscience. He leaned back again, eyes closed, letting the quiet hum of the cabin settle over him. No anger. No grudge. Just direction. There had been a time, not long ago, when he would have swallowed this down. Just another offense. Just another reminder that some people saw only skin, not story. But that time had passed. Because now, Darius Remy Langston owned the story. Back in first class, Rhonda Wilkes continued her charade, serving, smiling, and laughing with select passengers like she hadn't just dismissed a paying customer hours earlier. She hadn't checked on coach once. Hadn't even walked through fully. Just hovered in her safe zone. Her comfort zone. That was mistake number 3. Not because of the seat. But because she didn't know how close accountability had gotten. That it wasn't in a complaint box or an angry tweet. It was sitting quietly in 27B, watching. At 1:56 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Darius's phone buzzed with a secured notification. Ops admin. Review package complete. Ground team in position. HR brief ready. Clean sweep process initiated. No public-facing activity. All internal. He typed back only 2 words. Proceed professionally. When the wheels touched down in Newark, the cabin came alive with motion. Seatbelts clicked. Bags unlatched. Phones lit up with messages and missed calls. But Darius stayed seated. He watched as Rhonda preened at the front, thanking passengers like she hadn't just made someone's morning humiliating. The captain stood near the exit, giving robotic goodbyes. Passengers shuffled forward. Some glanced at Darius, vaguely curious. No one asked questions. They never do until it's too late. The man in the flannel shirt turned back with a smile. Hope they treat you better next time, boss man. Darius offered a dry chuckle. Hope you get that middle seat again. As he finally stepped into the aisle, every stride was deliberate. Measured. When he passed 1A, the seat still empty, he didn't pause. But when he walked by Rhonda, she didn't look at him. She was already laughing again. That was her final mistake. Just outside the plane, standing at the end of the jet bridge, 2 people in suits were waiting. Clipboard. Earpieces. Not flight staff. Corporate. They didn't cause a scene. Didn't shout. Just leaned toward the gate agent, quietly flashed a badge, and nodded toward the door. Inside, Rhonda and the crew had started disembarking. When she stepped out, still mid-laugh, she stopped short. The 2 corporate reps were directly in front of her. Ms. Wilkes, said the woman, tone professional. We need to speak with you privately. This way, please. Wait, what? Rhonda's voice cracked. The man didn't answer. Just gestured calmly toward a hallway off the gate. It won't take long. Confused, she stammered. Is this about the manifest? I didn't do anything wrong. Passengers were still exiting behind her. No one stopped. No one paid attention. But Rhonda's smile faltered. Then she saw him. Darius. Standing quietly a few feet behind the corporate rep's bag over his shoulder. Calm. Composed. Watching. Their eyes met. Wait, she whispered. Who are you? He stepped forward, just close enough for her to hear. You should have just looked at the ticket. Her jaw dropped. But the man from corporate cleared his throat. This way, Ms. Wilkes. She followed them, stunned. And Darius Langston stepped calmly out into the terminal, no fanfare, no noise, no need to explain himself. The air inside the terminal felt cooler than the plane, calmer somehow. But beneath that quiet buzz of airport chatter and rolling luggage, something irreversible had just begun. Darius didn't stop. He walked right past the confused stares, past the occasional backward glance from passengers who had noticed the suited escorts pulling Rhonda aside. None of them asked questions. Airports were full of strange moments. Most people moved on. But not the two figures waiting near a quiet corner of the gate. A man and woman, early 30s, sharp suits, neutral expressions. Remy Teka's Northeast Regional Compliance leads. They spotted Darius and straightened. Mr. Langston, the man said quietly. It's done. Full documentation is with HR. Legal has the flagged conduct, and comms confirms no media exposure. Darius nodded. Internal only. Keep it clean. No drama. Yes, sir. Do you want to handle the employee review directly? No, Darius replied. Make it professional. But firm. Let the facts speak. They understood. No further instructions needed. He could trust them with the rest. As they stepped away to finalize the transfer paperwork with Airline Corporate, Darius moved through the terminal like any other traveler. A regular man with a carry-on. No entourage. No announcement. Because real power didn't need a microphone. Meanwhile, in a tucked-away conference room near Gate 43, Rhonda Wilkes sat in a chair too small for her discomfort. She clutched a half-empty paper cup of lukewarm water and tried to steady her breathing. Across from her sat two HR specialists from the airline's East Coast office. With them was an older woman, poised, quiet, and unreadable. Her badge said Remy Tech Internal Compliance, but her eyes said much more. Nadine Foster had seen her share of stories. This wasn't the first crew member who let bias override policy. And Rhonda? She was textbook. I don't understand, Rhonda said for the third time. Why am I being pulled? I've done nothing wrong. The HR woman opened a folder. Ms. Wilkes, we're reviewing your conduct on Flight 782. There are multiple passenger reports, including logged interactions and flagged behavioral patterns. Rhonda's face twisted. So someone complained. People lie all the time to get free miles. You think that's fair? Nadine finally spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. This isn't about a complaint. This is about a choice. A pattern. What pattern? Rhonda's voice rose slightly. I follow the rules. No, Nadine said, calm and steady. You enforce them selectively. The room froze for a moment. The HR rep slid a document across the table. This is the boarding record for Seat 1A. The passenger was correctly assigned. Confirmed first class, fully paid, no flags. You told him he didn't belong there, and you never checked the system to verify. Rhonda glanced down. Her name was there. The timestamp. The record. I thought he was a standby passenger trying to sneak up. You didn't think, Nadine said firmly. You assumed. Rhonda opened her mouth, then closed it. The HR rep added, this isn't the first issue we've had logged under your name. But it may be the last. You're suspended without pay pending full review. Final determination will be made within 72 hours. Rhonda's voice cracked. Is this about that man? The one who sat in coach? No, Nadine said. It's about you. But yes, he's the reason you're sitting here. He didn't report you. He didn't shout or demand your removal. He didn't ask for anything. Then why? Because accountability doesn't always come from anger, Nadine said, standing. Sometimes it comes quietly. From someone who knows how to watch. Back in the terminal, Darius waited at baggage claim like everyone else. No black car. No VIP treatment. Just a man with a carry-on, leaning against a railing, checking his phone. A message came through from his COO. Transition confirmed. Volair full integration begins Monday. Press release deferred as requested. Internal audit scheduled. He replied with one word. Perfect. Then another message from his assistant. Board asking for a statement about the incident. Should we prepare a release? No. No headlines. No theater. Just progress. A few feet away, a kid sat on the floor watching cartoons on a tablet, legs crossed, parents checking bags nearby. Darius smiled faintly. That used to be him, terminal floors and long waits. His dad would hold his hand and tell him, one day, you'll fly the plane. Turns out, Darius didn't fly it. He bought the fleet. Minutes later, his ride arrived. A simple silver Hyundai. No tinted windows. No driver in a suit. Just Molu, an Ethiopian immigrant with kind eyes and an easy smile. You Mr. Langston? Yep. They pulled away in silence. Newark's skyline blurred into a steady hum of steel and brick. After a few quiet miles, Molu glanced in the rearview mirror. Business trip? Darius looked out the window. Something like that. You fix the company or break it? Darius laughed softly. A little of both. The driver nodded, satisfied. Sometimes, both is needed. As the car moved through traffic, Darius thought of all the rooms he'd been dismissed from. All the times he was asked if he was with tech support. All the glances, the assumptions, the slights, small to others, but enough to bend a man's spirit if he let them. But today wasn't about bending. Today was a shift. A quiet, undeniable correction. And he hadn't raised his voice once. The hotel room was understated, no suite, no penthouse. Just a standard king with clean linens, a city view, and silence thick enough to hear his own thoughts settle. Darius dropped his bag near the armchair and sat on the edge of the bed. Rolled his sleeves to the forearm. Loosened his collar. He didn't turn on the TV. Didn't check the minibar. Just stared out the window from the 15th floor. Below, Newark churned as usual, horns, exhaust, people moving fast, most with their heads down. A city like any other. But for Darius, something had shifted. He leaned back against the mattress, exhaled once, and remembered. Not the plane. Not Rhonda. But everything before. His father, George Langston, worked a city bus route in Glendale. Rain or shine, he'd leave by 4:30 a.m., come back 12 hours later with a story and a little grease still under his fingernails. He wasn't a talker. Not about race. Not about money. But he had lessons. Darius remembered being pulled over once when he was a kid. They were in an old Impala, heading to a diner for pancakes. The light had just turned yellow. "Why are they stopping us?" Darius asked, confused. His dad didn't flinch. "Some folks need to remind you where they think you belong," he said, as the officer walked back to the squad car with their papers. "Don't let them be the ones who decide." That line lived in Darius's chest like a second heartbeat. It echoed now. Because that was the real story of today. Not a woman being removed from her job. Not even a CEO enforcing policy. It was about belonging. It was about how quickly people believe you don't. He stood, walked over to the small desk, and opened his laptop. The screen blinked to life, cursor pulsing on a blank email. He typed a memo to his leadership team. Subject: Conduct and Culture. Reminder: leadership isn't about how loudly we show power. It's about knowing when to use it, and when to hold it. Let's be the kind of company that sees people clearly the first time. D. He hit send, then closed the screen and leaned back. No press release. No internal celebration. Just the ripple of an action done right. That's what mattered. Across town, Rhonda Wilkes sat in the back of a lift, still in uniform. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap. She hadn't said a word since being escorted out of the debrief room. No handcuffs. No yelling. Just paperwork. She had wanted to scream, to say it wasn't fair, to insist she didn't mean anything by it. But deep down, the silence in that room told her she already knew better. And now? She couldn't even remember what the man's name was. Back in the hotel, Darius finally lay down. The room dimmed as the clouds over the city thickened. Rain tapped lightly on the glass. He wasn't angry. Not anymore. Because today proved something vital. He didn't need to wear power on his sleeve. He didn't need the first-class seat to prove his worth. He didn't even need people to know who he was. He just needed to act. And to ensure that no one else behind him had to swallow the same disrespect in silence. That's what success looked like to him now. Not flashy. Not loud. Just deliberate. Calculated. Permanent. The next morning, a quiet tension floated through Valair Regional's East Coast Operations Center. Word had traveled, but not in the way scandals usually do. There were no headlines. No trending hashtags. Just whispers. Subtle shifts. Silence in the break room when certain names were mentioned. Darius Remy Langston was back on the move. He arrived at the operations building not with an entourage, but with a leather messenger bag slung over his shoulder and a calm, unreadable expression. Security didn't even know who he was until a regional VP scrambled to meet him in the lobby, breath catching in his throat. "Mr. Langston, I didn't realize you'd be visiting in person." "That's the point," Darius replied softly, walking past him. "You see more when people think you're nobody." They moved through corridors lined with company slogans, soaring together, where service meets excellence. Irony hung off those walls like dead wallpaper. In a glass-walled conference room sat several department heads, HR, operations, legal, and compliance, waiting for the post-acquisition briefing. Darius didn't raise his voice once. He laid out the future of Valair, accountability-driven service audits, retraining for frontline staff, and a rotating mystery passenger program that would report directly to his office. Performance evaluations would no longer rely on passenger surveys alone. They would include documented behavior, employee feedback, and escalation protocol adherence. And then came the shift in tone. "I don't care about slogans," Darius said, finally taking a seat. "I care about truth. And you don't earn customer loyalty with slogans. You earn it when people feel seen, especially when no one expects them to be." The room was quiet. "Yesterday, one of your employees made an assumption based on appearance. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last unless this company stops protecting comfort over correction." Someone cleared their throat nervously. Will there be terminations? Darius looked up. Not angry, focused. There will be accountability, he said. That's not the same thing. But for some, it might look similar. The HR director nodded. They all knew what he meant. Back in the hotel later that afternoon, Darius stood by the window again. The rain had passed. The sun cut through steel-gray clouds like a silent spotlight. He wasn't staying long. Newark was just a layover, on a larger mission. His phone buzzed. COO, Alyssa. Press still quiet. Flight staff update, Wilkes requested a formal appeal. Darius. Decline. She wasn't terminated. She was evaluated. That's the difference. He pocketed the phone. Down in the hotel lobby, a teenage bellhop held the door for him as he stepped out. Heading back to the airport, sir. Not yet, Darius said. Got one more stop. The car waiting outside wasn't a luxury sedan or an SUV. Just a modest black Camry with a driver who barely glanced up. Darius got in, adjusted his seatbelt, and pulled up a location on his phone. Destination, Southside Newark Community STEM Center. 15 minutes later, he stepped into a low-income after-school program where Remitech had just donated 20 laptops and 2 3D printers. No media. No check ceremony. Just a quiet email to the center's director, use them well. We were once those kids too. The director, an older woman with salt and pepper braids and tired but kind eyes, recognized him instantly. You could have just sent the equipment, she said, surprised. I know, Darius replied. But sometimes, kids need to see who they could become. A dozen middle schoolers were already gathered, eyes wide as he answered their questions, about coding, about business, about what to do when people underestimate you. He smiled and said, let them. That's how you walk in and take the whole room. Later that night, back in his hotel room, he opened his laptop one final time. A video call request blinked at the top corner of his screen, his father. Darius clicked it open. George Langston's face appeared, older now, gray in his beard, but eyes still sharp. You look tired, the old man said. It's been a long week. You fix it? I started to, Darius said. Some people just needed a reminder of who they were dealing with. George chuckled. Proud of you, son. You did it without yelling. Not a word. Good, his father said. Power ain't about noise. It's about making people listen when you say nothing at all. And with that, they sat in silence for a moment, father and son, 2 generations of black men who'd lived through dismissal, condescension, and disrespect. But who had never let it define them. Because dignity doesn't ask for permission. 3 days later, a formal HR report was finalized. It concluded without fanfare, without drama, just a sealed document delivered to corporate headquarters, citing pattern conduct inconsistent with the values of the newly merged leadership structure. Rhonda Wilkes' employment with Volair was terminated, not with a press release or a social media storm, but with a direct call and an official letter. There were no appeals. No counterarguments. She never even made it to the second meeting. Meanwhile, inside Remitech headquarters in Chicago, the leadership team reviewed the final debrief on the incident. No legal exposure. No employee leak. No viral video to manage. Everything had been handled exactly the way Darius Langston designed it, silently, completely, and with unmistakable weight. When the VP of Public Affairs asked whether to include the incident in the upcoming quarterly board update, Darius only said, mention the culture audit. That's all they need. In a world driven by public outrage and online outrage mobs, Darius had taken a different route. He'd proven that real accountability didn't need a stage, it just needed intention. That same week, a new internal memo was sent across all Volair regional staff networks. Subject: You never know who's watching. Treat every passenger with dignity. Not because they might be important, but because you are. Executive Operations Oversight, RMT Group. No one knew who RMT Group was. But those who did, they didn't forget. A few weeks later, Darius sat alone at a quiet cafe in Tempe, Arizona. A place he used to pass on foot, pockets nearly empty, trying to visualize a life bigger than his surroundings. The same streets, the same stop signs, only now, everything felt different. He sipped his coffee slowly, watching students pass by, phones in hand, backpacks slung over one shoulder. It felt good to be here. Not as a man who had made it, but as a man who'd come back, knowing his place in the world was no longer something to fight for, it was something he owned. His phone buzzed again. From Alyssa, COO. Update, staff retention metrics improved 9% post-audit. Brent, from 782, requested transfer to training division. Wants to help reform cabin crew onboarding. Do we approve? He smiled. Darius. Approved. And promote him. Good instincts should rise. Somewhere else in the country, another passenger was boarding a flight. And somewhere in that line was someone being watched, not by cameras or press, but by conscience. Because every person walking into a cabin now had a better chance of being treated with respect. Not because of who they were, but because of what one man in 27B refused to ignore. They say the loudest moves in life are the ones no one sees coming. That real power doesn't walk in and announce itself, it waits. It watches. And when the moment is right, it reminds everyone exactly who it is. Darius Remy Langston never needed a spotlight to demand respect. He brought clarity, not chaos. And in a world that often mistakes silence for weakness, he reminded us all. You don't have to shout to make change. Sometimes, you just need to move in truth, and let the system catch up to your standards. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or judged before they even knew your name, this story is for you. Let it remind you. Stay composed. Know your worth. Move with purpose. And the next time someone doubts your place, don't argue. Just build the table they're sitting at. If this story resonated with you, don't scroll away. Subscribe to True Echo, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because someone out there is still sitting in 27B, waiting for the world to see them. And when it does, it'll never forget.